They didn't say I was out, but they didn't need to. The recipes were still in the box, but the stove had gone cold, and no one noticed. Evan said they were hiring a meal service. He smiled like it was a favor. I nodded like it didn't hurt, but it did. That box. It wasn't just ink and index cards. It was the last thing in that house that still had my name on it. Funny, isn't it? How the first sign they're done with you sounds like, you've done enough. So I packed the box and a photo and left before the coffee pot cooled. They took the will. I took the recipe box. There's a silence that screams nothing. It just shows up where you used to sit. If they never said goodbye, but you still felt erased, you may want to stay for this one. The envelope was already open when I got it. Evan had tucked a yellow sticky note on top. Just sign here, Mom. It'll help us streamline everything. No stress. The signature line was already highlighted. It felt like when someone hands you a form at the doctor's office and tells you, it's all standard. So I signed, in my kitchen, with the same pen I used to write his lunch notes when he was 10. A week later, I went to pay property tax on the house. The clerk looked at her screen, then at me. I'm sorry, she said gently. You're not listed as the owner anymore. I laughed. I said, that's not possible. She showed me the file. New name, Evan's name. No co-owner, no mention of me. I drove home in silence. Called him. Voicemail. Called Grace. Disconnected. That night, I received an email. Not from Evan. From a paralegal with a name I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Trust update. No action required. Inside was one sentence I remember word for word. As of April 3rd, Beatrice Holloway is no longer named within the Holloway Trust. It didn't feel like theft. It felt like formatting. A quiet replacement, neat, precise, without a ripple. 3 days later, Grace posted a photo. Evan, Grace, the kids, standing on my porch. The caption, finally home. So grateful to plant roots where it all began. Where it began, no mention of me, no trace of what came before. But what struck me wasn't the photo. It was what I didn't feel. I wasn't surprised, because somewhere in me, I had already known. The day Grace sent out invites to her sister's baby shower, she left me off the chain. The time Evan updated the family group chat and forgot to re-add me. The Thanksgiving email marked for immediate family only. At the time, I had told myself, they're just overwhelmed. But it wasn't oversight. It was rehearsal. I started tracing backwards. The dinners I wasn't invited to. The doctor they recommended for my memory checks. The paperwork labeled temporary authorization that somehow became permanent. They didn't shove me out. They just stopped pulling up a chair. And that was colder. Because when someone yells at you, they still see you. But when someone reorganizes the furniture and forgets to leave you a place, they're not mad, they're finished. And maybe the worst betrayal isn't the one that breaks your heart. It's the one that makes you realize your presence was a placeholder all along. You don't notice when they start turning the volume down. Not all at once, just a little each day. Until one morning, you're speaking, and no one hears you. And you wonder if maybe you were never that loud to begin with. That's how it felt. After the papers, after the silence, after the photo, I kept waiting. Not for a sorry, just for a small return, a thinking of you, a meme, a mistyped text, something lazy, unintentional, but human. Nothing came, so I went back to my routines. Washed the mugs, refilled the bird feeder, made lists I didn't need, and when I couldn't sleep, I'd sit in the kitchen and stare at the second chair across from me. It had always been his. One night, I opened the memory box, not to cry, just to confirm. Inside was a picture of Evan when he was 5, holding a stick like a sword. I'd written on the back, "My little knight, defender of mama." But I stared at that line too long, and it didn't feel true anymore. Had he ever defended me? Had I ever really needed defending? Or had I just made that story up so I wouldn't feel so alone? Memories lie gently. They mean well, but they're liars all the same. They help you forget the Thanksgiving when Grace served dinner without asking if I liked anything on the table. Or the time Evan said, "Don't worry, you don't need to come to the school event. I'll tell them my grandma's picking me up." Or the anniversary when I received no call. But a neighbor's dog sent me a card with a paw print. I forgave it all. Said, "They're overwhelmed. They'll come back." But maybe they weren't busy. Maybe they were building something, and I wasn't in the blueprint. That became clear the day I saw Grace post a photo of their dog, Cooper. She wrote, "He's the best thing our kids will ever have." Not one of, just the best. I didn't comment, didn't get mad. Just sat there, holding my phone like it was a letter I wasn't meant to read. I began to see it for what it was. They hadn't removed me. They had simply built around me. Until the structure no longer needed the piece I used to be. One morning, I poured 2 cups of tea. I'd done it without thinking. It took me a full minute to realize the second cup wasn't needed. I poured it out and stood there, not moving, not blinking. I wasn't grieving Evan. I was grieving the woman who still made tea for ghosts. I should have noticed earlier. The signs weren't loud. They never are when people decide to slowly erase you. At first, it was the small things. A newsletter subscription Evan used to forward to me. Gone. A shared grocery list we used for holidays. Disappeared. Not big, not loud, just faded. One afternoon, I went to the little cafe where Evan and I used to sit after Sunday service. Same mint booths, same hum of the espresso machine. The waitress smiled when she saw me and asked, "Where's your boy?" I paused, then said quietly, "I think he's building something that doesn't include me anymore." She blinked, said nothing, and in that silence, something broke. Back home, I opened the cedar box. It held old photographs, his kindergarten card that said, "I love you more than lunch," and a USB stick he'd left behind during a visit. I had never touched it. Curiosity wasn't what made me plug it in. It was grief looking for something solid. Inside were folders of legal documents, PDF scans, email attachments, redlined versions of a trust agreement. One file stopped me. It was an evaluation, titled, "Capacity Assessment, B. Holloway." The summary read, "Client demonstrates early-stage cognitive impairment. Recommendation, transfer of financial authority." I blinked. The document was dated March 9th. I had the flu that week. I hadn't left the house. I hadn't even spoken to a doctor. Then I saw the email thread attached. Evan and Grace had coordinated it. A psychologist I had never met had written the evaluation, based solely on a phone conversation with them. My name had been removed from the family trust on March 12th. I was never told. There was a version of the new will. The beneficiaries listed were Evan and Grace. No mention of me, no joint assets, no survivor clause, not even a symbolic dollar. But what struck me more was a note scribbled at the bottom in Grace's handwriting. "Keep things clean. No emotional loose ends." I sat back, not angry, not devastated, just cleared out. Like someone had reached in and scooped the furniture from the room where I used to be loved. Then I remembered. The jokes. "You're sharp for your age, Beatrice." "Don't worry, we'll handle all the complicated stuff. Just rest." You've done enough." I had smiled at those moments, thought it was kindness. Now I saw what it really was. Construction. They were laying down the foundation of a story, a narrative in which I was quietly moved off stage. No one had shouted, no one had pushed, but they had all agreed. She doesn't need to know. She doesn't need to be part of this. I pulled out paper, not a computer. I wanted to feel the pen. I didn't write to accuse. I didn't ask questions. I didn't use the word why. Instead, I wrote about my silence. I wrote about how I had once left Evan's basketball game early. Not because I didn't care, but because I had worked a double shift and didn't want him to see me asleep in the bleachers. I wrote about skipping vacations so he could go to summer camp. I wrote about staying quiet during his wedding speech when he forgot to thank me, because I told myself, that's what mothers do. They step back. The letter was not a list of sacrifices. It was a map of exits. Every hallway I stepped out of. Every door I closed softly so they could have more room. I ended with this. I never stopped being your mother, but I understand now you stopped needing me to be. I printed it, folded it, put it in an envelope with no address. Then I copied the file into a new USB. On the label, I wrote, "For when you forget who edited me out." I didn't send it. Instead, I placed it in a small velvet box and slid it into the back of a drawer I never open. Not to be discovered, not as proof, just as a placeholder for something once known. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the corner where Evan used to color as a child. I didn't feel rage. I felt absence. The kind that doesn't scream, but hums like a fridge you didn't notice until it stopped. There is a peace in naming something without expecting anyone to hear it. A truth that doesn't need witnesses. A love that doesn't beg to be counted. They wrote me out. I rewrote myself. And sometimes that's enough. I didn't announce anything. No goodbyes, no forwarded address. I packed 2 suitcases, 1 box, and left before the coffee pot cooled. The house was never fully his. I had signed the documents, but on the final page, in the smallest corner, I had added 1 sentence, written in my mother's handwriting. You don't inherit love, you earn it. He never saw it, but the clerk at the county office did, and that was enough to pause the transfer. By the time he realized, I was gone. The sale went through under my name. Clean, quiet. I didn't keep the money. I sent it forward. I created a fund in the name of my mother, Marlene Whitaker, the same woman who stitched coats for girls who couldn't afford zippers in winter. The fund's mission was short. For women who were told they gave too much, too early, to people who never learned how to hold it. No photo ops, no ribbon cutting, just a P.O. box and a signed check. I opened a new phone line, new bank, new name on the mailbox, M.W. Beatrice. Not hiding, just no longer standing where they expected me to stay. I heard later that Evan had been trying to reach me, that he was confused, that something in the paperwork didn't match. He wasn't angry, just unsure, because I had changed the script. They wrote me out with full confidence, but I had already footnoted the page. Before I left, I emptied the kitchen, took one thing, the family recipe box. Evan always said he'd pass it down. He never asked if I was ready to let it go. I mailed it to the community library. No return address, just a note inside. Feed who shows up, not who assumes the seat. I didn't need applause. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted them to realize the story only ends when the last sentence gets written. And this time, I held the pen. The laundromat smelled like detergent and overboiled coffee. The kind of place where no one looks too long at anyone else. That's why I liked it. No small talk, No memories, just cycles, hot rinse, fold, leave. There was a plastic chair near the back, always empty. I'd started sitting there every Wednesday at 3. No reason, just quiet. One afternoon, I brought the recipe box, the one I'd mailed weeks ago, but the librarian had returned it with a sticky note. Thought you might still need this. I hadn't opened it until now. A girl walked in, maybe 7. Backpack half zipped, one sock sliding off. She was with her older brother. He left her with a soda and disappeared toward the vending machine. She looked around for a place to sit. Then she saw the box in my lap. She didn't ask. Just came over, touched the lid, and sat down beside me. Not across, not opposite, just beside. Like she'd always belonged there. I didn't say anything, neither did she. She opened the box, picked out a card, read it silently, then slid it back in like it was too precious to take. For the next 10 minutes, we didn't speak. We just listened to the hum of machines. 2 people, sharing nothing, but not alone. When her brother returned, she skipped off without a word. The chair stayed warm, and for a moment, I didn't imagine Evan sitting there. I didn't ache for an apology. I didn't rewrite the past. I just let the moment be what it was. Small, undemanding, real. Some people erase you on purpose. Others arrive without knowing they've drawn the outline back in. She didn't bring questions or answers. She brought weight to an empty chair, and somehow that was enough. Some goodbyes don't happen out loud. They happen in kitchen drawers where nothing's been moved for weeks. In the chair, no one offers you anymore. In the photo, they still keep, but don't mention when guests come. If you've ever been erased quietly, you know how loud silence can be. You don't have to name it. You don't have to fix it. But if something in this story sat down beside your stillness, let it stay. And if no one ever asked what was taken from you, but you still carry the echo, maybe this was the answer you didn't owe anyone, but needed to hear anyway. Let that be enough.